Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
A cabinet minister says the government should be celebrated and not criticized for that Baha Mar deal. That story straight ahead.
Senator Dr. Dwayne Sand says the government has shown contempt for the Bahamian people with its refusal to give key details about the Baha Mar agreement. That story straight ahead.
Forecasters keep a close eye on Invest 99L as it nears the Bahamas. Plus, a hero's homecoming for star sprinter Shawnee Miller. Welcome to our news. I'm Christina McNeil. Thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight, amid controversy surrounding the decision to have Baha Mar documents sealed, Education Minister Jerome Fitzgerald says people ought to give the government a little more credit when it comes to the troubled multi-billion-dollar resort. Fitzgerald telling our news team that he finds it unfortunate that people in public life would seek to ridicule the Prime Minister over what he feels is good news. Kyle Joaquin tells us more.
Christina, Fitzgerald says he doesn't think people understand the amount of work the government put into making this deal a reality. And as far as all of the criticism being thrown at the Prime Minister and the government, he says he doesn't understand that, as this should be a celebratory moment for the country.
I can't for the life of me understand why we're not celebrating that. I really, truthfully, I don't understand it.
Fitzgerald said everything in its time. However, at this moment, he said it's best that key information regarding the Baha Mar agreement remain out of the public domain. The education minister said what gets him most are criticisms of the Prime Minister and assertions that government is trying to hide something by requesting Baha Mar documents be sealed.
When you're talking about concessions, we're confined by the Hotel Encouragements Act when it comes to construction, and we're confined and restrained by the most favored nation clause that we have with Atlantis.
Opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis has said if elected, an F&M government would review the Baha Mar deal and address anything party leaders feel is not in the best interest of the Bahamian people. But Fitzgerald said critics like Minnis are making reckless statements, and it only shows they're not fit to lead the country.
But he should have known that a government is constrained by law and by the most favored nations clause, so that in and of itself should have restrained his commentary with regard to the matter, and he should have spoken responsibly. Now, at the end of the day, as we have done at every single stage, he's going to be made to look like he's really not fit to lead, unfortunately, just by the statements that he's made. You heard what Peter Whitehead said, and I think he captured it best, when he said what the government had accomplished was an impossibility. Right. An impossibility.
Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram has already said the government should have stayed out of Baha Mar's business after it filed for Chapter 11. But Fitzgerald said it's almost election time, and the Bahamian people will be the judge of whether the government handled the situation the right way.
The Bahamians will have to be the judge of whether or not this government, led by Perry Christie, was truthful and came to the best conclusion of this matter, which regarded the payment of unsecured credits and the remobilization of the project. Now,
again, Fitzgerald says all of the information regarding that deal will be made public in due time. Reporting from the Office of the Prime Minister for our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Thanks, Kyle. Well, the Christie cabinet's decision to withhold key details of the Baha Mar deal is nothing more than a show of contempt for the Bahamian people, according to Senator Dr. Dwayne Sand, who criticized the decision to have the agreement sealed. Dana Smith reports.
Sand said in refusing to provide substantive details on the Baha Mar agreement, the Christie cabinet is sending a very concerning message to the Bahamian people. Shut up and let Big Brother take care of you.
The incredible secrecy over this agreement forces us to be incredibly suspicious. And I think, unfortunately, that many Bahamians now view this as nothing less than a show of contempt for the intelligence of the Bahamian people.
Christie announced on Monday the government and China Exim Bank signed an agreement for the completion of the mega resort, and more details on it would be revealed in the coming days. But on Wednesday, it was revealed the Supreme Court sealed that agreement at the request of both parties, a move which prompted many to question why. Sands dubbed the move peculiar.
But what did we have to sell? What did we have to give in order to accomplish this? We have seen in the past that large tracts of Bahamian land were basically given away in order to entice certain levels of foreign direct investment. And so what did we have to give up in order to gain this so-called victory.
Government's announcement on the Baha Mar deal came as Moody's Investors Service downgraded the Bahamas' sovereign credit rating by 1 notch. Sands said he's sure the Christie cabinet would have been made aware of the downgrade in advance, and he accused the government of making the Baha Mar announcement as a means to divert attention away from the downgrade.
Saying it categorically, this was a distraction, a deflection, a red herring. Let's talk about some good news for a change, because people are tired of hearing real news, real talk.
Taking note of the many unanswered questions surrounding the Baha Mar deal, including possible concessions and payments to creditors, Sands said the government needs to provide answers.
It's an absolute disrespect and contempt for the Bahamian public. So you just sit small, shut up, and we will tell you what we believe you ought to hear. And if you ask for details because you're an educated, intelligent person, we are going to stonewall. And worse, we're going to have the Attorney General get up and say what a wonderfully trustworthy person our Prime Minister is. I think it's a very, very sad time. And, you know, it doesn't get more animal farm than this.
Reporting for our news, I'm Dana Smith.
Thanks, Dana. In other news, Free National Movement leader Dr. Hubert Minnis yesterday refused to answer questions regarding the letter of intent for Stellar Waste-to-Energy's renewable plant signed by Bambootown MP Renward Wells. Wells signed the document back when he was a member of the Progressive Liberal Party and parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Works. He came under harsh criticism from the opposition for it. Asked about it, Minnis would only say, "We will discuss that on a later date." The F&M's deputy leader also seemed hesitant to respond.
You know, I just think that there's obviously more to the story. That's all I can say about that.
Back in 2014, Minnis tabled questions that he insisted the PLP answer regarding the LOI. He asked if Wells would be disciplined. Wells was eventually fired as parliamentary secretary and later left the PLP to join the F&M. Minnis recently appointed him leader of opposition business in the House of Assembly. Well, nearly 2 weeks after she dove into the hearts of Bahamians at the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, gold medal winner Shawnee Miller and other members of Team Bahamas Tune into our news, the weekend edition, tomorrow evening for the highlights of today's event. In other news, forecasters continue to keep an eye on Invest 99L, the storm that threatens to bring thunderstorm activity and gusty winds to parts of the Bahamas and South Florida. According to the National Hurricane Center, rain and thunderstorm activity associated with Invest 99L has increased during the past few hours, but the tropical wave remains disorganized. The National Hurricane Center is predicting that this system still has the potential to develop into a tropical storm later this week as it passes the Bahamas and enters the Gulf of Mexico. Forecasters say regardless of development, gusty winds and heavy rainfall are likely over parts of the Bahamas. So if you live in the southeast Bahamas, that's Inagua, Mayaguana, Ackland, Crooked Island, Long Island, Ragged Island and its Keys, and South Andros, the National Emergency Management Agency says you should expect to experience heavy rainfall and gusty winds. Residents should also note that there have been temporary changes to hurricane shelters on Long Island and Acklands. As always, you should always know where your nearest hurricane shelter is. Meanwhile, residents in the central and northwest Bahamas should expect to experience stormy conditions throughout the weekend. Still to come on our news, the DNA blasts the opposition leader's silence on the LOI controversy.
What the president of the Chamber of Commerce has to say about this week's credit rating downgrade. That's coming up tonight on our news.
Stay with us.